All right, go ahead.
Father.
Sorry.
All right.
Okay, I'm ready.
Last minute itis here. Okay. Well, we're here again. Been a while, been about 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've been together here.
But here we are. We're running just a little late tonight. So I guess we're on Baptist time.
There you go, that works.
Yeah, so we're doing session 12 tonight. I've only got one more session.
Okay.
That's,
Then you're all out.
that's all I got left. Actually, there's a lot more we could teach and do, but I only committed to 12 of
Right.
this neurodevelopment cycle. So
But now
tonight,
you have a whole series of books you're working on that are going to come
Absolutely.
out, going much more in depth on what a lot of this is.
correct, yes. And when it's written in a book, then you can go and make your notations, and it's a little easier to get through them, I think.
Yeah. Great.
And I can be a little more thorough, a lot more thorough on my teaching. And every time I get through with one of these, I go like, oh, man, I forgot to mention this and that and the other. So at any rate, we'll just pick it up and go.
Yeah, sounds good.
So tonight we're talking about mobility and mobility issues. We've talked a lot about anything from neonatal reflexes, which affect the mobility development quite a bit. And we'll talk about one of your kids a little with some of his mobility issues. And that helps make it live and real.
Right.
So
Right.
we got the live crowd on YouTube and Facebook, and we have the liver and live crowd right here in life. And I know we have people watching in Arizona. Let's see. I know Cindy Harris would want to be mentioned in Louisiana, and she's an avid fan. And hello, Cindy. And with people in Texas, California, and other places. These are the people I know. So at any rate, tonight we're going to talk about mobility. And you had just came into this with your child the other day.
Right.
So tell me what happened.
Well, we were just working on some exercises trying to help develop I forget the word now, the two parts of the brain talk to each other
The
better.
laterality.
There we go. And so we were doing some exercises involving using both sides, and he just couldn't do it and fell over. So,
So this is a child also where he's got some issues in the neonatal reflexes. Now come on in, folks. We got people piling in here. So the peanut gallery is filling up. Yeah. So
but no throwing anything.
we've talked a lot about receptive function. Receptive. We built this whole picture of the brain through receptive, how things come through the eyes, where they lodge in the brain, how you bring it back out. And the tactile function we covered last week with issues with hot and cold, temperatures, sensing, too sensitive to touch, or hypopain, where they come in, they've got a broken leg. And it's like, Johnny, where'd you break your leg? Oh, I don't know. Was it broken? Well, you're bleeding, right? You got bones sticking out, and they just don't even know it. It sounds ridiculous.
When they go together sometimes, because the really bad stuff, it's like nothing, and then any little thing, they're
I know. They've got a head on. They bump their head on a hanging pot and make it rattle a little, and they go, "Ow!" You know, and it's like, man, the kid just took a shot from an axe handle right to the face and laughed it off. And then, so anyway, when you get emotionality tied up in that, so we've been talking about receptive functions quite a bit, how the signals get into the brain, and how, like in some of your children, they have mixed dominance issues. They have issues where they're not seeing things like they should because of macular development in the eyes.
right.
We see that they're mixed in their their hands to their feet to their eye to their ear. They should be all right-handed, right eye, right ear, right-footed, or they should be all left hand, left eye, left ear, left-footed to be organized. And if you're mixed up in your dominance, then your brain is going to be mixed up. And then you're telling the kid, we want organized function. Johnny, why don't you act like a 10-year-old? How come you only act like a 4-year-old? But emotionally, they're a 4-year-old. And so all of this input, receptive function, comes out in expressive function. And tonight we're going to talk about mobility, which is an expressive function. And that's to do a lot with how the brain perceives, takes in, and then brings out. Language is an expressive function. So is mobility an expressive function. Manual function, how well they write, how well they can do things with their hands. That is an expressive function. So when we keep putting it in the mathematics, we put in the homeschool with the drop my notes. We put it all in, and then we want it out. We want it to come out. We want it to come out organized. But with some of these kids, it's like sending a tornado through a wrecking yard and saying, "Okay, assemble a fully working school bus," because they're disorganized. And if they're disorganized, then the output will be disorganized. And the same thing with mobility. So mobility starts at about 10 weeks of gestation. The bones are starting to form. The fingers are moving. The limbs are moving. The kid's just doing somersaults in mommy's womb, and playing jump rope with the umbilical cord, doing what kids do when they're 10 weeks old. And that's when expressive function of mobility is starting. And all during gestation, the neonatal reflexes are also building. And then some of them integrate, they disappear, it goes on to the next layer of development. So you've got your foundation, and then 5 layers up, you've got a problem, because this spinal column was not developed. And this is the case in your child, where you can't use from side to side, not particularly your child, but children with this issue. And we talked about this, their neonatal reflexes. They have bedwetting problems and issues like that. They can't army crawl, they can't catch a ball, all kinds of things. They're uncoordinated.
They can catch it with their face pretty good.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I'll go ahead and laugh. We got the liver than life crowd here too. So. Yeah, so when the baby's born, you got random motion. That's all you've got. Nothing organized except for the cry. There's a lot of reflexes. So you can go through all the reflexes. You blow in their face, and they hold their breath. If you put them in water, they hold their breath. That's a reflex. They've got the rooting reflex. You touch their face, they go towards it. They're rooting. They're looking for some food. And they're all on reflex, but they have random motion of hands and feet and fingers and toes. Nothing coordinated. Their head flops around. You hold up the child, and bam, you get a headbutt because they can't control it. So that's the first thing they have to get is head control. Without head control, we're not going any further. The eyes are going to have trouble developing. They can't coordinate. They have no horizontal plane to look at. So they start developing their head control. And then they'll get like a primary grasp. Actually, the prehensile grasp is next. You put your finger in their hand and they grab, right? And they don't let go. It's like, ooh, how cute. Well, Johnny won't let go. You give them a rattle and they can't let go. And they're hitting themselves with it and they're going like, what's happening? Because they can't let go. But eventually, that reflex goes to release, where they can release. And then it becomes volitional, where you can handle the rattle, they get tired of it, they can put it down. If they don't want to hold your finger, they don't hold your finger. So that's as the child is developing. So then they will develop a primary grasp where they grab things. You put Cheerios in front of them on the gluten-free Cheerios, organic gluten-free. And you put that in front of them on the tray at their baby stool thing. High chair.
There you go.
And they grab.
Or you throw them on the floor.
Yeah, they're using that grasp. They find, I can release these.
Mm-hmm.
I can play put and take because mommy will pick them up and give them back to me now. And then it becomes a game. But they have that grasp where they grasp the Cheerios and then it comes to the face. And we discovered in tactile function last week that when they're born, a majority of their tactile input is in their mouth, their tongue, their lips. So that's where they touch and taste the world. That's everything goes to their mouth because they don't have this developed quite yet. So a vast majority of it is there, but the primary grasp, they grab the food now, and then they start to get the finger grasp. This is the opposing thumb and finger. They start to develop that. Then they can pick the one Cheerio up at a time. And that's what separates us from a lot of the animal world, is having that thumb and opposing index finger, the ability to grasp and to specifically grasp our world. So while they're getting their head control and while they're starting to get their prehensile grasp and then release, they're also starting to roll over. And that's actually, there's a spinal reflex where you kick with a leg and then the whole body follows with a twist. Interestingly, your young son cannot do that. So he's stuck back in that primary level, and we're working through that.
Working on it, yeah.
Working on that. That's why you're doing these motions, and you were doing the, what do they call that? The dog?
Bird dogs.
Bird dog. Hand out, the opposite leg out, and you're on one hand, one knee.
First time I did that, fell over.
Right, so he is not going to be able to do that until he can do his log rolls correctly. Until he can kick with the right leg and then the body follows and he rolls across the room until he hits the TV and then he has to roll back the other way. The left leg comes over and they roll. Well, this child, this infant is developing that. And that's part of their development. If they can't kick and roll over, they're going to have mobility problems. And pretty soon they can roll over. And we go like, little Johnny rolled over today, Dad. You know, mommy's all excited. He rolled over. Phew, it's a good thing. But how they roll over is a big thing. And that's part of their neurodevelopment. And probably one of the most damaging things to children these days in this critical time of development is the back to sleep program. Oops, I'm going to catch a lot of flack over this one. But a baby wants to lay on their tummy. They need to lay on their tummy. If you vaccinate them, they lay on their tummy, they stop breathing. Oops. So SIDS just doesn't happen. It's very rare in the unvaccinated population. SIDS does not happen with a child with 100 milligrams of vitamin C a day, vaccinated or not. And that's decades of study on that. Simple 100 milligrams a day. But the back to sleep is you put them on the back so they stay breathing, and then sometimes they still die. And it's very sad. And then what happens? They get the flat spot on the back of their head. That's not supposed to happen. That is not a normal part of child development. That is because we are trying to overcome damage and injury that we're doing in other areas of their life. So I hate to harp on this vaccine thing because I'm not anti-vaccine. I'm anti-adjuvants in the vaccines. I'm anti how quick you give them. And I'm sorry I'm going to lose some of you folks, but we're talking about a program that is causing neurodevelopment issues in the child. Go back to sleep. Then they got the flat head, then they've got to wear the helmet to squish their head back out. Well, the skull has 23 bones, which are all part of mobility. Those 23 bones, 22 depending on which college you went to, because the hyoid bone we counted at my school. And it's here in the throat, kind of holds things together in the throat, not specifically attached to the skull. But okay, so I lose that argument. 22 bones in the skull, and they open and close like a network of gears.
You realize you just lost an argument with yourself.
Yes.
What happens?
I was just throwing that out there. We're the humor part of it. I'm here for humor.
Yeah. There's extra charge for that.
That's right. You can send your payments too. That's right.
So maybe 11 times a minute, the skull opens and closes. And it is a cleverly designed hydraulic pump. God made your skull to open and close like that because it pressures the cerebral spinal fluid. And it pulls on the meninges. The meninges anchor the brain to the skull. The meninges attach in the skull, the cervix of the neck, down in the sacrum. And they attach indirectly with every ligament in the whole body. And I've had people at my clinic that have had, like one guy in particular said, man, I just can't get rid of my knee problem. My chiropractor's been working at me. He gets me in alignment, and the knee's good for 2 or 3 days, and then right back to the knee. And I said, well, your skull's out of alignment. And if your bones aren't opening and closing, it pulls on the ligaments, it pulls against the cranial nerves. Now we've got cranial nerve issues, compressions, problems going on in development because of that. And it pulls the knee out of place and causes a mobility issue.
You have someone in your crowd today who has that exact issue you just described.
Apparently so. Yeah, so it's like pulling on a burlap sack. You pull a string on this end, that end kinks up. So when the baby, we've got a professionally trained midwife in here. So she knows that the baby gets compressed coming down the birth canal. And this actually helps set up the cranial rhythms for life. In a child, the C-section child, they don't get the head compressions. And their head's nice and fat and round instead of, cone shaped. And they need a cranial adjustment ASAP to make sure we get those 23 bones opening and closing. And when you've got the flat head syndrome going on, well, you've just interfered with the meninges of the skull. You've interfered with those 23 bones opening and closing, because now a couple of them in the occipital portion are jammed, they're flat, and they don't mesh, they don't work, they don't. So now we've got to compress the skull. It makes the skull round, but it doesn't always free up those. So I highly recommend, if you can find a biocranial therapist. I was a licensed certified biocranial therapist for years and years and years, or a craniosacral specialist. And ask your chiropractor, can you manipulate the skull? Because if you trap the skull, it goes into full external rotation. This is a child who sticks their head in the porch rail. You got some nice porch rails right out your window there. Have any of your kids ever stuck their head in it? Apparently not those. They stick their head in it, and now their head won't come out. Why is that? Their head fit through. Well, if you trap that cranium, you cause it to go into full external rotation. It expands. Right? And if you expand it completely, it breaks past all the adhesions. It helps everything come back to more normal. It takes about 20 minutes after a trap. And I was giving a lecture on the cranium, and this girl came running up afterwards. She said, oh my gosh. It just explained everything. I was out at the corral. I stuck my head between a couple boards, and I couldn't get out. And I hollered. I was a little girl. I hollered. I cried, and I couldn't get out. And I wore myself out. Nobody came to my rescue, and I fell asleep. And when I woke up, my head just boop came right out. And now she knew why, because after about 20 minutes, the skull relaxes. It goes into more normal. But this affects mobility. The problem in your knee, the problem in your ankle, could be a problem in your skull. And you need to find someone, or I like to tell people, lay on the back of on your back, on your bed. If you got a good hard mattress, find the edge of the mattress and just stretch and hook your neck right there. If you got a tall chair, hook your neck in it and slump. And you'll trap that mechanism, it'll help. You might be surprised. I've had people with headaches because their cranium doesn't open and close right.
What about like those inversion tables when you hang upside down? Does that release that pressure in the same way or not really?
Not in the same way, no. But I like inversion tables. They're great. I've got one.
I just wonder because like, if I have a headache and I lay on that upside down, it makes my headache go away.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wonder if that's what you were describing.
Nope. I mean, depends on the position.
Just thought I'd ask. We're a highly professional Facebook Live here.
You
Poor Craig.
You lost that one. I lost one. You won. 1-1.
Craig likes doing these with people who are more have better questions than I do. I just try, be humor and keep the conversation going.
Oh boy, does it. So, the baby gets to where they can roll over. This is very important. If your baby's not rolling over, there's a problem, right? And you can actually help your baby roll over. You can, let's say you have a traumatic brain injury, and the person now has no mobility. Guess where you have to start? With the log roll, you have to get them where they can roll one leg over. Well, first of all, you have to have random motion of fingers and toes. And you have to rebuild from the bottom. You have to find the lowest level of development where the aberration is. And you have to build from there. And then the other things start to straighten out. Kind of like we'll pick on your child. He could not process 6 items in order. He could not take them into his brain and bring them back out in order. And at 6 is that number we talked about where concepts form. So you're trying to teach him phonetics. And he's going like, I hate phonetics, I hate reading. That's just the stupidest thing. GH does not make ghosts laugh. It's dumb. That stick that looks like a bent, that you're saying number 7 what? Those are concepts. And little Johnny can't get the concepts, and you're just beating him up. But you start raising his sequential processing, and the first thing you did, you stopped teaching him phonetics. Right, mom and dad both were like, yep. And all of a sudden, life got easier.
Yep.
And now, he came to me a few weeks ago, and he says, I love to read. Mom's going like, what? The kid loves to read. He's hated reading. Because of all the concepts involved. So his sequential processing skills are coming up. But that was a lower foundation level. And same thing with mobility. And a good part of reading is being able to track. If they don't have good head control, they can't roll over, if they can't do the army crawl, they will not be able to track efficiently. And their brain will be disorganized. We'll go like, Johnny, you're going to read. And we're going to read until you can read. And it becomes a nasty lesson in how mean can you get to me? Okay, if you can't read in 20 minutes today, we're going to go for 40 minutes, Johnny. So you might as well buckle up.
Yeah.
When the whole problem is, little Johnny can't crawl, his coordination is off. He can't take things in the correct eye, put them in the correct center of the brain, bring them out. And it's all tied together. Expressive function comes from organized receptive input, and they both work together.
Yeah.
So next thing they do is they start to wiggle around like a.
I was going to say just an encouragement too, is we've done been working on some of those things with the child you're referring to. It's been interesting that this morning his reading has really jumped up as we've stopped trying to do phonetics and just done flashcards and showing him a word, doing the game you described. And this morning he read a whole paragraph of the section we were all reading as a family this morning, and I was amazed. It was the best he'd ever done by far. It was, didn't you think? Yeah, it was great. It was really, and he was so excited that he had been able to do it. I can't read. Well, let's just try. And then all of a sudden you realized he knew almost all the words. So,
okay, well, we're making progress. And I typically say that if you have a child with developmental delays, if you have a child that's behind, and if we really nail it, if we find the root problems and start to fix them, I totally expect that child to advance one grade level every 3 months. In fact, if you're coming, back when I had the clinic, if you're coming to me and your child is not advanced one grade level in 3 months, I'm like, what did I miss? What's going on? And we're talking about children with Down syndrome, we're talking autism, Asperger's, you name it. I don't pick them. The parents bring them. And we go to work. So what you're seeing is advancement.
Right.
I mean, I guess, have you made a year's advance in the last 3 months in academics?
Probably not a year, but we haven't been quite as hardworking and faithfully disciplined at it as we should be.
You're getting what you put in.
We're getting what we put in, but we're getting stuff out, and we're doing what we can do. And I think the encouragement of that is, if you work really diligently, you can have the kind of advancement you're taking. But if you actually don't have that capacity, but you can do some, whatever you do actually is producing a
and when you have 5 kids and a livelihood to earn and everything else going on, it's juggling. How many lemons can you juggle?
Yeah, exactly.
We'll throw one more and they all fall apart. Right? I'm pretty good at 3 sometimes, and then by the time you throw that 4th one in, everything falls.
Right.
So I will commend you. Because you're doing awesome things. And this is a child who they said, get him comfortable, teach him to adapt, keep him alive until he's 18, he's on his own, maybe he'll live on his own. You go, well, this kid's going somewhere. This kid will.
I agree.
All right. They're rolling over. They're wiggling, they're scooting. Usually they start scooting by going backwards because they're like, how's this working? And then pretty soon they figure out how to army crawl. And that army crawl, the knee and the elbow come together, and this hand comes up, the other leg goes out, and they're looking at this hand. And then they reverse. And if your child can't do that, sometimes you have to get on top of it. Sometimes you have to take 2 or 3 people, especially with a case of traumatic brain injury. You're trying to regain mobility. Somebody has to turn the head. Somebody has to work one side, stretching one arm, one leg out, while somebody puts the other knee and elbow together. And then everybody has to switch. With this guy on this side opens up the arm and the leg. This guy brings the knee and the elbow together, and then somebody turns the head. And you have to start to pattern that brain to get it going. If the child does an army crawl, they're going to have trouble reading, they're going to have trouble with emotional development, they're going to have trouble academically, sociologically, and then they get in trouble with the judge, and he says, all right, kid, join the army or go to jail. What's the first thing they do at the army, in the army?
Army crawl.
The army crawl. Heck yeah, the machine gun's going off, and they're crawling under barbed wire. They've got to do it. They will teach you to do the army crawl. They teach you how to shoot a rifle. If you're right-handed, which eye do you use? The right eye. They come out of basic training, and everybody goes, whoa, little Johnny grew up. He's mature. Holy Toledo. Can you believe this kid? He's standing straight. He's standing tall. He's successful. I can see this kid going somewhere because he army crawled. Because the Army crawl, guys, because they organized his brain. Because they sent him through some amazing things. They trained him to use the right eye, the right foot, the right hand. Because you're not going to go in the Army right-handed and shoot a gun with the left eye. You ever seen a child try to do that? Hand them the rifle and then they go plumb to the other side trying to do that. I had my granddaughter shooting at a rifle range, and there's one of them I had to patch the left eye because she's right-handed and she's holding the rifle and she's trying to get on the other side so she can look with her left eye.
Mm-hmm.
So we just put some tape over one lens of her safety glasses, almost all. And that girl is a marksman.
Mm-hmm.
She is the best shot of all the kids. Mm-hmm. It's pretty awesome. So the Army fixes them. Well, why wait till the Army? Yeah, let's do the Army crawl. Set up an obstacle course in your yard. Have them run through the tires. Have them crawl between the chair legs and the table. Get in with them, Mom and Dad. Don't make your kid go out walking and you don't walk. Walking organizes. That's mobility. And it organizes the brain. Husband and wife are having a fight. And the wife says, well, I'm going to go for a walk. And boom, boom, boom. She's off and she's walking down the street, arms swinging. She's mad. By the time she gets back, she's, honey, I know what to do. Because her brain's now organized. She's in the logical hemisphere of the brain. So the best thing you can do, I'm not picking on you in particular because I don't know you. But if this has happened with the husband, go for a walk, but swing those arms. It organizes the brain. That's part of mobility. Mobility works with emotionality. And if you hinder the mobility, you're going to make them emotional, right? So, and it could be a subclinical thing. It's like, I'll grab your arm right there. Not so bad, is it? Don't feel real bad about it.
Doing fine.
10 minutes from now.
Probably doing fine.
Tomorrow morning.
I'd probably punch you at that point.
Right. So
yeah.
Think of the kid with their brain in a twist because of their cranium.
Right.
And their arms don't swing right. Man. And then we're mad at them because they act like a 4-year-old. I keep dropping my notes.
Do you want a music stand or something?
I'm not even following the notes. Army crawl. They have to get the Army crawl. And then they get up on their hands and knees. Usually they skip from scooting on the floor to hands and knee crawl. And you're like, well, where's the Army crawl then? Well, let's check for it. And if they can't do it, they have to complete it. And once you complete it, it's like riding a bike. You forget how you ride a bike. You don't, unless you've got a traumatic brain injury or you're allergic to gluten. And now, and you just ate a bunch of gluten and now your brain's inflamed. You got the brain going on. So something interferes with it if you lose it. Right? If you're having regressions, even small, temporary, something's causing it. So once they complete the Army crawl, it's done. You might have to go brush up on it because it's like, well, how did that? Oh, yeah, there it is. And it comes right back. So we've got to get that. Then they go from that to hands and knees crawling. And here they're seeing in the peripheral, they're seeing their hands move. And their landscape's going by. They've developed this horizontal life. And their eyes are starting to track. And they're seeing this in the peripheral, and the peripheral tracking is coming up. So that's the next step. And then after that, they get up and they walk in the primary balance. So they're kind of running across the room with their hands like this. Right? Mm-hmm. So cute. You see them. They just toddle around. And then eventually they get to where their arms and their legs come down. And then they get organized mobility function. So if they can't swing their arms and legs, and this is my story, because I had polio when I was little. I didn't walk until my parents bought the metal fire engine, metal pump fire engine, and I'm 4.5 years old, and they put me in this metal fire engine, and I'm going around the naval complex on concrete, pumping these, and it patterns my brain, and all of a sudden I can walk. But I didn't swing my arms. So I'm in my 30s, and I've got to be holding on to somebody's hand, child's hand. This is before cell phones, so I couldn't clutch my cell phone. I'd lift my thumbs in my belt loops or hands in my pocket, and I'd trudge along. And it's very disorganizing to the brain. I did not develop the cross pattern walking. And as soon as I did, as soon as I started doing that cross pattern walking, so you do it exaggerate if it's missing. You come up, you tap the knees as you go on walking. As you're marching, you really give it what for. And the pons level of my brain didn't have what it takes to utilize that. So neuroplasticity said, oh, send it to the cortices. So I walk from the cortices of my brain instead of from the pons level like other people. So even in the case of traumatic brain injuries, you start at the lowest level, you rebuild, you send the signals to the brain, and the brain says, well, what's that? Oh, hey, let's do something with that. You start out sending the cows down that one trail, and the trail gets deeper and wider as it goes. Even if you have to take and have 3 people put them through the pattern, if you have to do that, you have to do that. And the brain starts to go, hey, I kind of like that. So while we're at the subject, when you're going down the mall, next time sit on a bench and watch people walk by, see how many swing their arms, and see if they look happy or sad or mad. I mean, there could be a correlation. One of the most disorganizing things in a woman's life is a purse. They're clutching that purse.
I agree.
And they're walking with one arm swinging, and it disorganizes their brain. And it helps
And
make
that's why they're emotional.
Well, they're more emotional than they could be, should be.
Careful, okay.
But same with guys.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not swinging, if you can't swing and organizing your brain.
Guys are always walking around with their hands in their pockets.
Yep. If people walking with their hands in the pockets have mobility issues. Did it come from flat head syndrome? You know, we now have a generation coming up where we're seeing these were the flatheads, and now they're young adults. And what are we going to see? You know, I don't know. There should be a study done on this. I don't have time. I don't have the capacity to do that. But it'd be interesting to see the correlation. There's correlation between vaccinations and SIDS, between vaccinations and dying in their sleep on their tummy. There's a correlation. There's also going to be a correlation between that, mobility issues, learning issues, behavior issues. There is. How, to what extent, I don't know. But let's just fix it. You can study it till you're blue in the face. But if little Johnny can't army crawl, it's army crawl. He's having trouble reading, let's find out why. And if army crawl's part of that, let's get it done. Let's put him through boot camp. Put mommy and daddy through boot camp. Like I tell the teachers, and when the kids are out on the playground playing, and they're all emotional and having their fun and rocket ship to the moon and playing house and tag and all these games. They're in the fun trivia side of their brain, and then the bell rings, they come in, sit them down. Okay, now we're going to do math. Well, we are we? Class, settle down, class. Class, settle down. Class, settle down. When I teach the teacher to, okay, everybody line up, and Maggie Muggins, you're You're lead today. Okay, everybody march. Go into the classroom. We're marching in line. We're choo-choo train, and they get in the classroom. They march around the class. Okay, reverse everybody, and they march backwards. You cannot march backwards and stay in the emotional hemisphere, everybody. So now they're in the logical hemisphere where math is supposed to be, and they sit down, they open up the books, we got math happening, right? Because of mobility. It's mobility. Before you do your math, do something. Do some star jumps, some jumping jacks. Do some marching in place. Do an army crawl. Make them crawl to school in the morning. You know, I don't know. These two moms over here are coming up with a plan.
So I'm cheating because I'm sitting here reading your notes, but I was finding it interesting that down here you have writing skilled activities, pencil grasp, which is interesting. Some things I've seen with some of our kids, they have a hard time holding a pencil and actually. So how does that relate to some of the other development stages? Like if they can't do a pencil, how do you know if they can't do those fine motor skills? Would
Well, it's a
process
matter,
to that?
that's an expressive function.
Mhm.
An expressive function is a result of receptive function.
Right.
So input coming into the brain, which can be interfered with neonatal reflexes, tactile issues, you know, especially if the child is too sensitive, you touch them and go, oh, ow, that hurts. You know, or you, bam,
It hurt.
and they come home bruised, and it's like they don't even know where they got hit, where they have these receptive issues. They come out of the shower looking like a red lobster because they want to feel water. They don't know what it feels like unless it's 130 degrees. And they get cooked and they can feel it. And it goes like, oh, I can feel it. It feels good because I can feel it. They want to feel. That's the kid who wants the headbang. They want to feel. That's the kid. Sometimes they're doing self-injury, self-harm things because they just want to feel because their receptive function has a problem, which we talked about last week. So if you don't have good, clean, organized receptive function, the output, including manual function, is going to be skewed. And it could be they can't see correctly. It's the child who, when they're writing, their face is down on the desk or the tabletop for you homeschoolers who don't have desks. They're glued to the paper and they're writing like this because they're trying to see with their peripheral vision. We had that problem with some of your kids where they can't, it's look me in the eye, Johnny. Johnny, look me in the eye. Johnny, look me in the eye. But they can't see you in the eye because they've got two fists in front of their face, two dots, the blue dot from the flash of the camera in front of their face. So they're looking at you through the peripheral, and it affects their manual function. And so it all works together. Can't separate it, but you can. And you have to go back and fix the lowest level before you can build and rebuild the upper levels. A grasp, then they get the release, then they get the prehensile grasp is where they hold it, and then they can let go of it. A cortical function, can you rub your tummy, pat your head? That is separating cortices. That's crossing the midline of the brain. That's going from one side of the brain to the other. And if you can do that, you can coordinate the two hemispheres of the brain, your logics and your emotions. You got to practice on that.
I just had to make sure I could do it.
You know, can you take a ball, hit the floor, and catch it with the other hand? Hit the floor, catch it with the other hand. Can you cross the midline? And once you can do that, then you can coordinate both hemispheres, and you can, everything gets a lot easier. From math to sports to one of your kids wants to be a football player. This is the one that gets hit in the face with football every time because he can't see it coming at him
Yep.
because he's got the blue dot syndrome. The flash from the camera in the macula, his macula is not developed. So then they develop bimanual function. They can use a finger to pick up Cheerios with this hand or this hand. Now they will prefer a hand, and they need to be all right hand, right foot, right ear, right eye, or they need to be all left. Left is okay. It's just put them in a mirror, that's all. Nothing wrong with left. Now I will say this, is that it used to be 3 to 5% of the population was left-handed. Now it's growing 11%, 11 to 15%. Where our brains are evolving. So there is evolution. Evolution. There's the hormones, our hormonal evolution is going on. Our visual evolution, we're taking in more and more visually and less auditorily. It's affecting our social skills. So bimanual function, writing, skilled activities, skilled sports activities. You know, if they're right-handed, right eye, right ear, they should be launching that football with the right foot. So if they're not, they're going to be disorganized in their brain, and they're going to be making emotional decisions when they're trying to kick the ball. I had a bench warmer hockey player from Thunder Bay, Canada. And Thunder Bay, Canada is all about hockey. And he played for a professional hockey team, but he was a bench warmer. It's not a good thing in Thunder Bay to be a bench warmer. Not when they live, eat, breathe hockey. So they brought him to me, and I found out he's right hand, right foot, right ear, left eye. So he's going down the ice, and he sees the Malachi crunch coming, the linesman coming at him, gonna smack him up against the glass. And he's going like, oh, this is gonna hurt, and he misses his shot. He makes emotional decisions. So we reorganized him. We patched this eye, sent all the cows down this pathway, built a nice fat trail, had him established, right eye. He was a starter. Because now he could make the decision. The logical decision was, guy's gonna hit me anyways, it's a hockey fight. So I'm gonna make the shot, and then I'm going to defend myself the best I can. You know, I mean, not saying that's always the best thing. Somebody else here in the live is checking her eye dominance, see which eye she's using. So all this stuff, receptive, affects the expressive. Ooh, we've got 5 more minutes to wrap this up. So, function determines structure. Oops, I said that backwards, because structure is supposed to determine function, right? In my case, I couldn't walk, my legs weren't developed, my brain wasn't developed right. I did not have the structure to support the function of walking. So the kid's crippled. Live with it, deal with it. Keep him alive till he's 18, you know, help him use his brain. He's gonna have to use his brain, not his body. But as soon as I started pumping that pedal trip, the function was there, and it started to develop the structure. Okay? So don't get this idea that because you have an aberration in your structure, you're never going to have the function. Send the function, send the structure, build the structure by sending signals. You know, pattern the kid, do the army crawl, stand on top of them, help them with their arms and legs. And when they get it done, they've got it whipped. You can stop, go brush it up now and then, especially if they're having an emotional day. Well, you know, Romanian, I want to mention Romanian orphans. I had a whole slew of Romanian orphans. And they were usually kept in steel cribs. So they had no opportunity to develop their function, their mobility. Some of them were blind, basically cortically blind, because they hadn't developed tracking, they hadn't developed normally things. So that was a case of the structure did not develop because the function was not sent. Bracing versus therapy. When you put braces on them, you limit the structure. And now it gets weaker. Braces make you weaker. Eyeglasses, are your eyes getting stronger or weaker? I'm one to talk. So we send the function and the structure changes. So don't get discouraged if the structure's not there. Send it, develop it. All right, so to reiterate, to bring this all together, you cannot get organized function from a disorganized brain. That's in the receptive. It's also in the expressive. So if there's mobility issues, go back through this. I'll have some books coming out over the next few weeks and months. My editor's sitting on the couch over there going like, oh boy, here it comes. And we'll get these out there so you can read and so you can find this and discover this. It's not a secret, people. This stuff's out there. It's been taught. I learned it from somewhere, right? The Doman Delicato model is what I learned. And then I've expanded on it from there because it wasn't the end all of the end alls. So,
there's always something new to learn.
yep. Next week we'll do our final one in this series, number 13. And we're going to be talking more about expressive function. And then we're going to wrap this series up and make you wait for the books. So I need a cameraman to go turn our thing off. And we will see you guys next week, all right? God bless. And that stream.